Okay, we're here with Dave Clarke. Hello, Dave.
Bonjour, Phil.
Hello, bonjour, Dave. And we're also with Ade Fenton. Hello, Dave. Ade.
Hello.
Hello. And so to present you very shortly, well, before we start playing the tracks. So Dave, most people know you as being the so-called Baron of Techno, and both as a DJ and a producer and composer. But what fewer people know is that, as you beautifully said in an interview, you are more a person and not a musical genre.
Yeah, I think that comes from probably the mid-90s, early 90s, when a lot of journalists, when doing interviews, would want to put you on the, in a particular genre, so they could actually, journalists would actually try to put you on a genre. And I've always liked many types of different music. From the very beginning, obviously growing up in the UK, as was the same with Ade, there was a lot of musical choice available to us. We were like the bridgehead between America and Europe, so we would get a bilateral flow of music coming from both cultures, and we would sort of be the melting pot. And then you'd throw in also sort of like the Commonwealth history of music, where you'd have a lot of music from Caribbean islands like Jamaica and stuff coming also to the UK through the Windrush generation. So there was a lot of interesting music coming through, and I happened to grow up, I think, of course every generation thinks this, but I think I grew up at the time where it was very exciting. And we had disco music for a little while. We also had punk music, we had new wave, we had ska. And ska sort of melded to me the political intonations that were necessary that you weren't getting at school about social misjustice, in the same way that hip hop was. Obviously, some of the earliest hip hop was Sugar Hill Gang, but then you had things like Grandmaster Flash and The Message. And then you also had things like Tackhead, Adrian Sherwood, doing very interesting things with like Mind at the End of the Tether. So this was like the political sort of backbone of my knowledge. It wasn't from school, it was from music. And then, of course, there were other musical things like growing up in Brighton, there was high energy music. So it's like a real melting pot. And to sort of, obviously people knew me at that time for playing techno, still do, but also for making techno. But I had lots of other musical interests. I mean, I worked in a classical music shop part-time for about 2 years. My first techno moment was actually Gustav Holst at school. So I just had lots of different music, and I knew eventually, I think, that when the technology changed, because I can't play any instruments at all, like live, switch off the electricity and then I can whistle, and that's about it. So I can't do any music without electricity, and I can't do any music without a computer. So as the computer power got more progressed, and as instrumentation became more available, then I could go in different ways. And I think you started to maybe see that with my second album, Devil's Advocate, a little bit more, doing some hip hop, for example. But also with my third album, I was going into different directions. My fourth album, when it comes out, hopefully, will be maybe a surprising direction for a lot of people. But I just need to be in this environment where, I mean, I listen to music all the time, and I don't listen to techno very often except when I'm working with it. It's not because I don't like it, it's because I've done it for 30 years, and I feel that it has to have the purpose it needs to have, and therefore either play it in a DJ set or on radio, or if it's electro, I'll play it in the gym for myself to listen to. But generally, I don't listen to it. I listen to lots of different types of music all the time. Some of the people that you've interviewed, I've also interviewed myself to find out how they were doing stuff. Also people like Gary Numan, which of course Ade's just produced their his last album. People like Gary were highly influential to me as well. So, calling me one genre is a bit silly, I think.
Yeah. So we were talking about your different influences. And of course, as the show is mainly devoted to wave, I suggested we go back to the end of the 70s and talk about your first encounter with new wave and post-punk and this kind of dark underground music.
My first encounter, I mean, don't forget I was a kid. So I had like a little mono red plastic record deck that I used to leave outside the bathroom whilst having a bath, and get my mother to turn over the vinyl halfway through so I could listen to the music in the bath. And constantly I was listening to Metamatic by John Fox, and I was also listening to Freedom of Choice by Devo. So these things were like the first sort of new wave influence for me. And then Bombers and Me I Disconnect You, like the 12-inch of that, and various other things. Of course, this sounds impeccably cool. And of course, you know, the history is always written by the victors. So you always decline to mention some of the crappier records that you might have listened to at the time, like the Charlie Daniels Band, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, which actually I still have a soft spot in my heart for. But no, I mean, John Fox, Gary Numan, and Devo were my first sort of new wave. If I can't even call John Fox new wave, because actually John Fox is in his own category. It's actually not a genre at all. It's actually quite timeless. And then my first punk would have been The Damned and The Ruts. And a lot of people go The Clash, but I see The Clash as psychobilly. Apart from the incredible London Calling, which is like an amazing track. And actually my mother was more into The Clash, which also was a reason not to be into The Clash so much. But The Damned definitely, Machine Gun Etiquette was an influential album to me, probably my most listened to album of all time.
And so would you agree for us to play a track by John Fox right now? And if so...
So yeah, because I mean, you could tell that John was really the avant-garde, not pop influenced direction of Ultravox. And you can see the fracture about to happen. And you listen to that track and it's just like mind-blowing.
When I interviewed him, I asked him the question about the fact that Hiroshima Mon Amour, you know, the track on the second album of Ultravox, was probably the first new wave track in history. So if you leave the pioneers like Kraftwerk and all these guys, but your first new wave, you know, with the German influence, with the Weltschmerz in it, I think was Hiroshima Mon Amour from
it's terrible to say that if it wasn't for the film Breakdance, Kraftwerk probably would have completely gone past me without even knowing about them. It was only because I think either Ozone or Turbo were dancing body popping in front of a broom to Kraftwerk that I actually became aware of who Kraftwerk were. I you know, of course we knew Model, but it was like, she's a model. Yeah, okay, I get it. But it wasn't, see, with John, it was disenfranchisement, monochromatic, very, very UK. You know, I mean, obviously as children, we always called it underpants, but underpass was very, very new city, very Crawley, very Milton Keynes, very urban design gone wrong in our heads. And also it was still sort of commenting subtly on the Second World War, but the social effects coming 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
And it was far more interesting, even to me as a 10-year-old, or however old I was when it came out, to listen to those lyrics, not completely understand them. I mean, actually talking about lyrics that I didn't understand, I played on my Saga radio show recently, a track by Robin Scott, who did obviously pop music. I met him a brief while ago, and there was a track on there, and I didn't know the lyrics until I listened to it again. I was like, oh my, he's talking about rubber inflatable sex dolls. I didn't know, you know, but actually with John Fox, you'd listen to the lyrics and you go, I get what you're talking about, but I'm not quite sure, but I resonate with it as a 10-year-old. Yeah. And with Kraftwerk, obviously they are geniuses. Obviously they influence a lot of things from hip hop to whatever, but it just never got to me. So John Fox was my Kraftwerk.
And talking about new wave, Ade, let's talk about Gary Numan, because you're producer of Gary Numan, and I think he's releasing a new album.
Yep, May 21st, this coming Friday. Fingers crossed. we sell enough copies. It's looking all right at the moment. We've got 21 pilots to contend with. But yeah, I guess we'll find out in a few days' time.
So it's called Intruder.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it will be number one. The previous one was number 2, I think.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, look, all of that kind of thing is great. I think the record label are just more concerned about how many copies it sells, but that would be a tremendous bonus. But it's all down to luck, and Foo Fighters kept us off number 1 last time. So I don't know, maybe 21 Pilots will do the same this time. But it would be great, I must say.
And when I interviewed him a few years ago, it was on the day of his 60th birthday.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you also concerning the link with Nine Inch Nails, which is, according to me, rather obvious.
Yeah.
And it was funny that Nine Inch Nails was influenced by Gary Numan in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And that now Gary Numan is sort of influenced by Nine Inch Nails. What do you think about it?
I completely agree. Me too. Absolutely made no secret about it. Trent and Nine Inch Nails just make noises that makes me think, how the hell have they done that? I listen to pretty much every record they ever put out with amazement and looking at my speakers. Just how is that possible? And I just think you share the same taste in music as someone, you like the same noises as someone, and it's the same with working with Gary for me. We have a very similar taste in music. We love the darker side of music, but always with, melody, I guess. And obviously my job as his producer is to realize what the songs that he sends me into a commercially releasable record, whilst kind of realizing the sort of vision that he has for it. So luckily, when we're going backwards and forwards with ideas, 9 times out of 10 he's into what I've done, because as I say, we share a very similar taste in music, so that helps. And Nine Inch Nails are a massive influence. Have been on me over the years. Certainly I've been on Gary. But I think it's like a cycle. Trent's spoken about the influence that Telecon had on him when he was writing. I can't remember if it was the Downward Spiral or Pretty Hate Machine, one of those. And yet I listened to those albums and I can't hear Telecon in it at all. But it's clearly had some, like Dave was saying about John Fox. It's resonated with him, and Nine Inch Nails, when I was even though I got into them quite late, actually, Nine Inch Nails resonated with me. For me in 1979, it was John Fox and Gary Numan. They were the two people whose posters I had on my bedroom wall. And then to be sort of working with one of them on my 5th album, and John lives 5 minutes away from my house, it's a bit weird, really, but nice.
Great. So Dave, I was going to ask you about the evolution of techno, because even though this is not the topic of the interview, I've noticed that a lot of people like you and people like the Hacker, Amélie Lance, and a lot of people in Berlin are mixing techno elements with dark underground music. Do you see it as an evolution of dance, of clubbing music?
I'm not sure perhaps if all those people are mixing the two, but let's talk about the Hacker, or the Hacker, as we call him, with a French accent. Michel's always been mixing that. He's always been mixing those influences together. You can hear it. It's the same as Arnaud Reportini. Many of these French artists who take culture very, very seriously, understand the importance of respecting and growing from the good parts of our past culture. And so with the Hacker, that's obviously part of his DNA, is to do that. I'm not sure about Berlin per se, because it's a city, But there are some artists, obviously, within Berlin that will pursue this. But it seems to me to be more of a French thing to do. And also from the north of France, say La Rennes, Nantes, places like that, there'll be a lot of artists that are very influenced by that. And you can hear that in the modern electro they're producing. Belgium used to be like that, because obviously they did their thing with moving on from Frontier 42 to Neon Judgment, of course, with Dirk, into New Beat. And then New Beat was almost a sort of adaptation of New Wave, actually. With Flesh, Split Second. It was an adaptation where you'd actually wouldn't be too shy to put in strange European accented English lyrics, and it works. But then Belgium sort of, I mean, you have people like Radical G, but Belgium sort of, as a culture, sort of forgot about their past in that area, I think, and became more concerned with techno, pure techno, but also later on much more concerned with financially rewarding business techno, and therefore the marketability, and then restaking their colonial past with various other colonial interests within poorer countries, and actually putting that into techno, making it a very colonial form of music which will actually extract money above integrity. Whereas Belgium has, as the people themselves, I mean, you take obviously my favorite club in the world, Fuse Club. The Fuse Club will have like a history of being very, very respectful to the music. And Antwerp also has a scene that's very, very respectful to the music as well. You have clubs like Ampere, for example. And the person that runs Ampere is also very into wave music too. So you find out this a lot, but you know, certain clubs pushed the techno in Belgium over the edge into the Ibiza forum more than anything else, and became more of a money-making format than anything else to do with the integrity of the music, and even having oxymoronic names for their actual event names. You know, it's like, okay, sort of, yeah, both those words don't really fit together in that circumstance. But then it's about business, you know, which, okay, if you're honest about it, it's fine. But with Belgium, there was a very long history of very grey, dangerous, wavy music, and hopefully that will come back. Hopefully,
yeah, I'm sure it will. And let's choose precisely a track from, I would say, a Belgian band or a Belgian artist. I know that you have remixed Neon Judgment's TV Treated.
I have that on a square piece of vinyl somewhere. So I think I would like to actually go for the flip side of that, because back in 1990 or 1988, I was receiving some promos on vinyl from people that are pushing this new beat, and in it was Neon Judgment. And actually, I'd like to say also is sort of maybe prophetic or prophetic wishing, the Fashion Party. So the Fashion Party is over, you know, because they almost saw the Instagram DJ like 20 years ago. The Fashion Party is over, you know. Look at me now, making love to myself. You know, it's just like, it's so Instagram DJ. So I would like to dedicate that to all the male, female Instagram DJs that are not really pushing the boundaries of anything apart from commercialism. Fashion Party by Neon Judgment.
And Dave, I wanted to ask, before we listen to a second track from your latest album, I see, of course, a lot of different influences. I've described as a mix of underground wave, power electronics, EBM, industrial, dark ambient, a bit like as if Front 242 was meeting Nine Inch Nails and Nick Cave. What do you think about it?
Much to Ade Fenton's annoyance, and many of my friends, I'm not such a big fan of Nine Inch Nails, and I'm gonna say this out loud on radio, so none of you can ever unhear this. But in my esteemed opinion, which might not amount for much, I see and hear Mr. Trent Reznor's vocals in "I'm Just a Copy of a Copy of a Copy," sounding exactly like Seal. And if you listen, yes, Seal. If you listen to this record from now on, you will never unhear that actually Trent sounds like Seal. And I just have to say,
I don't hear it at all.
You mean Seal from the track with Adamski?
Yeah,
Killer.
Yeah, or New Roads when he's produced by Trevor Horn. I actually think that it's very possible that Seal might be moonlighting as Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you hear the same sort of compressed, mid-rangey coffee tonality within his vocal cords as Seal. So I'm not sure. I mean, we've never seen the two people in the same place. I think that's clear. We've never seen Seal or Trent in the same building. At least I'm not aware of. So I think they could well be the same person.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a very original. Maybe you can Ade via Gary Numan. You can make sure that Trent knows about this comparison.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Okay, so I suggest that we listen to the track that you did with Mount Sims.
Yes, Frisson.
So in general, how did you work together with both Mark Lanegan and Mount Sims and Gazelle Twin? Did you compose together?
So with Mark, I actually wrote the lyrics for Charcoal Eyes. It's the first time that I've written lyrics ever. And I'll send these lyrics to myself in 2 lines via email and then put them all together and then change them around until they made sense. And then I sent them to Mark and he went, wow, these are strong lyrics. And I was like, wow, I was really, because it was actually really the first time I've ever sent lyrics to anyone, and let alone sent lyrics to Mark fucking Lanegan from the Gutter Twins, from Queens of the Stone Age, and Mark Lanegan, of course. And then I had to wait a painful 24 hours thinking that he's probably thinking they're completely shit. And I was like, oh. And then he phones up or however it happened. He's like, yeah, I'm really feeling these lyrics. And I was like, holy shit, wow. And then, so that's how we sort of got together with that. And then with the other track, he wrote them, the lyrics. With Matthew Sims, he wrote like 85% of the lyrics, and I changed a few of them around and stuff. And I added some references to a French philosopher called Rabelais at the very end as well, which actually brings it very neatly into the B-side of Thunder, which is the storm, which I adapted Rabelais for the words of that. And I thought I'd bring Rabelais into this and you can hear my voice just a little bit underneath at the very, very end. And I wanted to work with Matthew because I loved his last album, and I met him at Munich a long, long time ago when I was working with Disco B Records, and he asked me the very same questions, like, I want to be in here when you make the bass drum. I want to see how you do these bass drums. So he was there for that, but I actually find Matthew like a really interesting, really sort of left field genius, like a philosophical might, and I really enjoyed talking to him. I didn't always understand what he was saying, but I really enjoyed talking to him, and it was a real pleasure for him to be working on the album. And Frisson, I wanted that to happen, and I wrote the track first before he came round, and then we did the vocals together. Gazelle Twin, she came over again and she wrote the lyrics for that, and I wrote the track before. So all the vocalists, actually every single vocalist, came round to the studio. Same with Louisa when we did that version of Is Vic there as well. IVT as it's now called. So yeah, it's very important to, I think, work. I mean, obviously in the past year, I think it's very difficult to do that, but I think if you can have people in your studio, even though they might have the technical ability, I think it's very important because there's always a collaborative side to that as well there, where the actual track might go in a different direction because you're working physically in real time.
I agree, Dave. But the flip side to that is that Intruder was record the entire album was recorded remotely because we had to do that. So,
Were you singing?
thankfully, not. You don't want to hear me sing. But with Elizabeth, obviously with Gary, Gorkum, Sen, everything was done remotely because we had no choice.
Yeah, I can imagine. And yeah, I haven't heard the album yet, but I can imagine that's the only thing that you can do. And also, it's a different continent too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, frisson in French. Huh? It's the French word.
Frisson.
Yeah. Why did you choose that name? That word?
Because it's the very thing that I felt when music actually touches me in such a way, and then I get
Goosebumps.
Is that what it means?
Or as they call in Dutch, chicken skin. But yeah,
Yeah.
in goosebumps, yeah.
And before we end this interview, just the last question about your projects for the future. Ade?
Okay. Yeah, so obviously Intruder's released on Friday. Everybody go and buy it, May 21st. And secondly, what have I been doing? Oh yeah, I've been working on a score for a film about boxing. So it's a documentary. It's called In the Company of Kings. Coming to a network near you probably sometime in the autumn. And it's a documentary about Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes. So that's what I've been working on most recently. And Dave's been busy in the studio, and he will now tell you what he's been working on.
I've actually just had a haircut, Ade. Well done. But I've noticed that. So I've just been also having a conversation with Louisa just while we were talking about this, about that Trent Reznor sounds like Seal, and she says that I'm evil, but she laughs. But anyway, so what have I been doing? I've been doing photography. I've been doing some writing. I've actually written an interview on Sound on Sound for John Fox. I've done another one with another artist, and I've got another one coming up hopefully this week or next week. And the photography sort of came to a little bit of a semicolon, full stoppy thought sort of thing. But this morning I've just been asked to maybe do an issue of a magazine for a Chinese German magazine. I'm not sure yet, so I'm going to find out about that. I was asked to do some photography exhibition in France, but I wasn't sure about the gallery. But I'm going to work fully on the photography and try and combine it with a musical project that I'm working on at the moment, which is with a violinist that I worked with, we did variations with Gustav Holst.
Is it Mathilde Marsal?
Yeah. The variations that I did with her for Gustav Holst, which was my first techno experience when I was a kid. And then we also did Carmina Barata, as I call it, Carmina Burana, for Laguna Shekier. So we're working together with Mathilde to do some music. We've done 4 tracks so far. I'm not sure what people are going to think, but actually that's not the reason for doing music, is it? You do it because it comes from somewhere within, and that's been happening. Yeah, and then maybe I'll have some gigs this year, although I'm not taking it too heavily until maybe 2022, and then I'm going to spend more time in the studio.
And can we expect a new album from a follow-up for?
I don't know about follow-up, but I think follow-up is in album number 4 that I might be involved in. Hopefully, yes. But let's see, we're track 4 in at the moment. And when we get to track 6 or track 7, then we'll have more of an idea of where we're heading and what's going on and what direction everything makes sense. But yeah, hopefully. And I've done a remix. I think I can talk about this now. I've done a remix of Fontaine's DC, which will be out soon. And some other remixes will be coming out soon as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And I hope to see you guys in the next future in Belgium or anywhere else. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.